Hello, my name is Tracy Ozer, and I'm glad you found our podcast, Journey Through Your Suicide Loss. I am asked all the time about how I've done this. How have I lost a child in a most horrific way and still get out of bed every day and function? Traveling along my grief journey, I created a platform, Journey Through Grief, that's Journey, T-H-R-U, Grief, to help people grieving a suicide loss, and to also share my story so it can help others. This podcast is for the survivors, the people who get up every day as well, the ones who are warriors without even realizing it. I'm going to talk about various aspects of suicide loss, also known as postvention, and maybe a few surprises along the way. I sincerely appreciate you being here. Welcome to our second episode that I'm calling The Fog. In our welcome episode, which I recommend you circle back around and listen to, I shared that I lost my daughter to suicide back in 2006, and I've been on a journey ever since to find peace, understanding, and mostly acceptance of the choice she made. I'm asked all the time about how I've managed to survive this loss, and so I thought it was time to share it with the world. Many people struggle from a loss to suicide, and if my message can help just one person, then sharing the story is worth it. Now, on to today's show. In the suicide loss community, we use various universal terms when talking about our grief. One of those is the fog. Have you ever heard anyone use this term? It relates to the state our mind lives within in the beginning stages of our loss. In a new suicide loss survivor, or maybe even a survivor not so relatively new, there is a lot of talk about the struggle to remember things or the inability to process new or usual simple information. Today I want to talk about this obscure but real concept. I know that I have experienced it. My brain went into a holding pattern. Questions and conversations would come in, but there was no processing going on. Certainly, it was the manifestation of my traumatic shock and stress from my loss. As I mentioned in a recent blog post on our website, complicated grief causes physical effects to your body. It can perpetuate illness, etc. Since your brain is obviously in your body, it is subject to physical trauma as well. This is all very normal, although extremely frustrating. The key to lessening it is learning to recognize when it's happening and having grace with yourself. It's all part of the process. You are not losing your mind. Don't try to make things too hard for yourself. The fog isn't linear. Some days are worse than others. Personally, this is what it looked like for me. I put things in the wrong place and I couldn't find them. I forgot appointments. I forgot to brush my teeth. I forgot about special days. The only 2 days that were special were her birthday and the death anniversary. I forgot what I had just read or heard. And mostly, it was just exhausting to think. My everyday existence consisted of the 5 Ds. Disorganized, distracted, distraught, distressed, and disoriented. Have you ever experienced the fog? Have you ever found ways to move through it? Please leave us a comment on this podcast or over at our YouTube channel or Facebook page for Journey Through Grief. For me, the fog was pretty intense for the first few years. Up until that time, I had a really good memory. I kept my schedule, the kids' schedules, kept track of upcoming bills to be paid, etc., all in my head. I could go to work, remember everything I needed to do and how to do it. Most likely, I could help others if they struggled with their own tasks. But then, my daughter died by suicide. Nothing was normal anymore. My entire brain function shut down and was taken over by grief and self-preservation. A week after Chelsea died, I showed up to work, but it was a struggle. You know how you occasionally forget where you put your keys? That's normal, right? But I did it consistently. Someone would ask me to pick something up at the store on my way home from work, and I'd forget that we'd even had the conversation. I'd see something on TV or read something, and then 5 minutes later I couldn't repeat it back. The frustrating thing for me was when people would point it out to me. It was just so unusual, and I was immediately defensive and embarrassed. For me, it was frightening to have the memory loss. I'd argue that it couldn't be true. I truly thought I was losing my mind. I couldn't see the thought in my head. I couldn't recall even an inkling of it. To give an analogy, do you ever just space off and don't really process thought at all, like you're in some kind of gray space? That's what it was like. But then trying to forcibly process thoughts in that space, and then nothing would happen. I had to write things down more. I had to tell people to remind me later about things. Work was harder, and I started getting confronted about tasks getting missed. Or they would ask me why I processed things a certain way, and I couldn't answer them. More embarrassment. Then secretly, I'd get scared that I didn't remember processing it wrong, which would lead to the optimal anxiety of looking bad to my employer. Have you ever been really sick with a head cold and you couldn't process thoughts at the time, but you knew it was going to be better in a couple days when you're well and you just have to wait it out? Well, the fog is like that, but it continues to go on for days, weeks, and even years. As I've talked to various suicide loss survivors over the years, I've been told the average amount of time for the fog to lift is 5 years. I don't know if it took that long for me. I know at around the 3-year mark, I was recalling things better, but not on a consistent basis. I thought the fog had lifted, but then someone would bring my forgetfulness to my attention again. But in the midst of this, I decided to go back to college and finish my degree. After losing Chelsea, this had been on my bucket list. Previously, I had taken a class here and there while the kids were little, but now I wanted to complete this goal. I was going to prove to myself that I was a functional adult now. I was really scared, though. Historically, I had always been a high achiever in school. I didn't want to go back now and set myself up for failure by struggling through assignments, not retaining information, and failing exams. But I did it anyway. And I also worked full-time, so that brought struggle as well. I replaced the exhaustion of grief with the exhaustion of memory retention. And you guys, I did it for 3 years. Along the way, I had to drop some classes occasionally, and my grades weren't always up to the level that I had been used to. But I needed to cut myself some slack and allow myself some grace. I was doing a hard thing, in the midst of not knowing what I was capable of anymore. But it was worth it to me in the end because I proved to myself that I could push through adversity. My loss to suicide didn't define me, and now I could take the loss and my new degree and help the world. After 17 years, I don't believe the fog exists in me anymore, but there are some residuals from it. I still write things down because I can't readily recall them to the degree I used to. But I can recall things easier on a daily basis now. The grayness that existed in my head is no longer there. My point is, as you heal, there's hope. If I had to go back and do these first few years again, I wish that someone would have told me that those mental deficiencies were normal for the magnitude of such a loss due to suicide. I wish there would have been materials out there to educate employers and loved ones that the fog is real and that they should find ways to accommodate the lost survivor and their thoughts in this process. They will find some semblance of normal again, but be patient because it does take time. In some future episode, I'm going to talk about the training I'm currently undertaking about how trauma physically and chemically affects the brain. I'm excited to learn how that can be attributed to suicide loss and grieving. Please come back and check in for new episodes. I welcome comments, questions, or let me know if there is a topic you'd like me to talk about. I will be happy to share my own personal journey. If you have found this podcast helpful, please consider hitting the listener support button, as we accept monetary gifts of support, which allows us to provide materials and educational information to those who need them. And of course, please share it. It may help someone else. Finally, Journey Through Grief has its own website at www.journeythroughgrief.com. That's THRU for through. They have their own Facebook page, and you will find our channel on YouTube, where you can watch my videos that cover other various topics within suicide loss. We appreciate it when you subscribe to the YouTube channel, because the algorithm shares us out with more people who need us. We want you to continue being here for future episodes. If you find yourself struggling and need someone to talk to, I recommend calling 988, which has become the new crisis line number. Take care. Until next time.